Welcome to lesson 6. Today we continue our journey into theory from our previous topic and discuss more about some time based elements in music theory. So, you might have often seen music has to be played with a certain rhythm with some repetition of count and a particular time frame upon which those counts need to be repeated in order to make musical sense. To understand that better, we'll go into some theory related to note lengths, and it's going to tell you more about how you can count your songs, what kind of science or math goes behind it to see how the pleasant musical effect comes through when there is regularity present in the song. So let's get started. Before we proceed, let's get familiar with some technical terms that are time related in music, starting with beat. You might have heard this word thrown around a lot, people saying beat or beats whenever they talk about music. A beat is a fundamental unit of music that repeats at regular interval. So, beat is the elemental part of music that gives you that feeling of regularity or rhythm. A bar is just a collection of beat, but it is still a musical division. It has to make mathematical sense with a specific number of beats, and that is also repeated across the song. But bar is going to be more calculative and informative to us when we get to reading sheet music more. Tempo is the number of beats that are played per minute. So naturally, the higher the tempo, the faster the song. And finally, time signature, which is a mathematical representation of number of beats in a bar. Before we proceed with any further explanation about any of these terms over here, which might be confusing, let's get started and understand something about note lengths. So think of a circle, and the more you divide it equally, the more equal parts you get of that shape. So a whole circle split into two would be a half, and those halves split further by two would be quarters, and then so on and so forth. And you'll see the ratios mentioned over here under the circles tell you how many parts are required to return back to the whole note. There's something similar like that in music, and that's really helpful in explaining note lengths in a song. So you have symbols over here that explain what note lengths look like on a sheet music, starting with the whole note and then going down the half note, which would make two half notes would make one whole note, so on and so forth. Quarter note would be two quarter notes to a half note, so four quarter notes to a whole note. And then you have the eighth note and the 16th note. Notice that the eighth note is the quarter note with a flag at the top. To go in further division beyond the quarter note, you just keep adding flags to it to tell you how much further you've gone down in division. So, eighth note would be one flag, 16th note is two. I don't have the sign of the 32nd note over here, but that would be a 16th note plus one more flag. Here's the explanation or a visual representation of what I just discussed a while ago, where you could really collect all notes together to bring them back to the composition of a whole note. So you have two half notes that make one whole note. You have four quarter notes that make one whole note, eight eighth notes to make one whole note, and you get the idea. Time signature is going to be a combination of the beat definition and the number of times that beat is played in the bar. Beat definition is just you choosing what what the note length is to be considered as part of the repetition in the song. More than often, you will see this to be a quarter note. People will say that a beat is a quarter note, and more than often that's true, but it's not a rule of thumb. Like you could have half notes or whole notes also be a beat. It's just unusual. So if you take a look at this time signature over here, you'll see that there's a number on the top and a number at the bottom. The number on the top tells you how many beats per bar are played, and the number at the bottom tells you what each beat's value is. take a note at the position of the time signature. It's usually right next to the clef, which means the time signature and the clef of the staff, they both go at the beginning and then the notes follow. Here are some common time signatures that you're going to encounter in sheets that you see. There are more than these, but these are some of the most frequently occurring time signatures that you're going to see. Starting with the 4/4, we just saw the example of 4/4 in the previous slide, and you can see that that is 4/4 notes in a bar. 3/4 is 3/4 notes in a bar. So the number 3 on top tells you how many beats in the bar, and the number 4 tells you what a beat is, and the beat in that bar would be a quarter note. Same goes for the 6/8 time signature, where it is 6/8 notes. So here the beat is defined by the 8th note. And finally you have the 7/8, which is a complex time signature. It's in the realm of complex time signatures. I believe that's the more commonly occurring one, or maybe that's just the one that I've seen more than others. Tempo, as we mentioned before, is the number of beats played per bar. So if you take quarter note as the definition of beat for this example, then that would mean the number of quarter notes played per minute is the tempo of that song. So naturally, if the song has a higher tempo, then you're going to have more quarter notes being played in a minute, which would mean they have to be played really fast, making the song faster. The diagram over here tells you that the tempo of the song is 120 quarter notes per minute, and quarter notes is the same as beats, so that comes down to 120 beats per minute, or BPM. You're gonna commonly come across tempo being represented as that unit. Here we have metronome audio clips that will explain every time signature at a given tempo, to give you more idea about what all of these technical terms actually sound like. So check this out. Those were clicks being played at that given time signature at the given tempo. I recommend listening to them over and over again so you can point out the differences between the number of clicks per bar. A bar is going to be restarted as soon as you hear the higher click again, so that's the beginning of a new bar. And I recommend listening to the last part of it again so that you can tell the difference in the tempo. But this is essentially the math behind explaining how music is repeated and how that adds to the musical effect as well. In the next session, we're gonna put all of this together, the notes that you learned from the previous topic and the timing that you learned from this topic, to play your first song. So that's going to be your first practical example of all the theory that we've learned so far. So see you in the next lesson.